Hi, this is Tina. I'm going to be presenting assignment 2, Genogram and Family Life Cycle Analysis. Description of the assignment. I will construct and analyze a 3-generation genogram portraying my own family with my generation as the middle generation. And after considering my own and other generations' cultural self-perceptions and considering our current family life cycle stage, I will analyze the family patterns shown in our genogram along the following lines. The 4 most significant FLC, family life cycle transitions, historical and recent, adverse or desired, positive, effects and responses, and how they influence your family's present functioning. Historic or ongoing marginalization experienced by members of your family. Health conditions, including mental health conditions of family members. Relational patterns of interactions that were and/or are facilitated by transitions and conditions described. Identified strengths and targets for change and sources of stress and support. This is a genogram of my family. So this is me, Tina. This is my siblings. I have 10 of them, 9, one is passed. These are my sons. This is my dog Olive, my ex-partner, my mom and dad, my mom's siblings, and above that are my grandparents on my mom and my dad's side. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. This is a photo of myself and my siblings. This is me. This is my dad. And this is the one and only photo that we have of our family together in a group. Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud was a song written by James Brown back in the 1960s to represent our blackness. And my father purchased a t-shirt for all of us, and we wore those t-shirts to school, and we all were sent home. So I thought I'd share that memory with you. Okay. Family custom. I remember the smell of the freshly cut Christmas tree which my father purchased for us every Christmas. My siblings and I would trim the tree with garland, paper chains, popcorn, chains, candy canes, icicles, and Christmas ornaments. We would drink eggnog and watch our all-time favorite Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Tree trimming at Christmas was a family custom that we loved and anticipated for an entire year. This was an advantage for a family with 11 children. This custom allowed me to maintain a sense of connection with my family despite my migration to Canada. I have afforded the same privilege to my sons. My conjugal family arrived in Canada on July 4th, 1999 in Toronto for my husband's new job as a pediatric pathology at Hospital for Sick Kids. I was unable to continue employment because I was pregnant with my 3rd son. My older sons would become dual citizens of Canada and the USA. We had met the entry requirements pertaining to language, financial stability, and education. Leaving Oak Park, Illinois, I resigned from my job as the pre-admission screener supervisor for adult mental health for the state of Illinois in Chicago. We said farewell to family and friends with a small gathering at our apartment. My younger sister from Wisconsin attended with her daughters and husband. We cried a lot this day she cried a lot this day and told me that she felt I was abandoning her. At our new home in Markham, Ontario, our new neighborhood was sprawling with new homes and young families. My sons embraced their new life with a diverse group of children. We felt welcome in our new neighborhood and comfortable in our new home. How previous generations positioned themselves culturally. African Americans. My parents and grandparents are African American. My father's culture was farmers and cotton pickers, also known as sharecroppers. He had a grade 3 education and struggled with reading and writing in adult life. My mother's culture was maids, house hands, and sharecroppers. My great-grandmother once told my mother that the farmer would stand behind them as they picked cotton and threaten to cut the heels of their feet if they didn't pick the cotton faster. My mother had a grade 5 education. Southern Baptist Christian. My parents grew up in the southern United States, Georgia and North Carolina, known as the Bible Belt, with over 29 million Christians in the area. My mother and father were married at ages 15 and 17. My great-aunt Elsie signed the marriage certificate at the Justice of the Peace for my mother because she was underage. My mother had her first daughter out of wedlock at age 14. She was pregnant with her second child when she married my father at age 15. Although my parents were Christians, they did not have a church wedding. We were raised Southern Baptist and celebrated Easter and Christmas. My father did not attend church with the family. He had become addicted to alcohol. There is a history of drug and alcohol abuse and mental health in my family. The family life cycle. One of the discussions I identify within my family was taken from Family Life Cycle Theory, a Feminist Critique with Lucy M. Candide, MD. The assumption that men's and women's economic paths are identical to the nuclear family. Income statistics are skewed toward men as the breadwinner in the family. In my family, I had the higher income in Chicago as my husband was a resident physician. Amongst my siblings, I was the first to receive both a bachelor's and master's degree. Education and gainful employment in the Black community keeps one from becoming a public aid statistic. It keeps youth out of jail and supports family growth and development. Position in the family. Poverty to middle class. My life cycle starting with poverty in childhood, experiencing work-class conditions as a low-income university student and single parent, and finally becoming a middle-class professional married to a doctor. This journey has helped me understand how fragile economic security can be, and how emotionally destabilizing is the absence of such security. I am grateful for food, clothing, safety, and security. I support families that are struggling in our community by donating time, clothing, and monetary means. My sons have taken the same approach as they support initiatives like Greenpeace and World Vision. Religion. Raised Baptist, married into Catholicism, now a Mennonite. I attended church every Sunday with my mother and siblings. We participated in Bible classes and sang on the church choir. At the age of 10, I joined the Anita Stroud Foundation, a Christian support youth group for underprivileged youth. I was not allowed to get married in Germany in a Catholic church unless I converted to Catholicism. I engaged in catechism classes through the Catholic Church in Chicago, Illinois, and was awarded my certificate. After the wedding in Germany, we attended Catholic Mass regularly. Both our sons were altar boys, which were servers. After my divorce, I had a strong urge for praise and worship church, so I started to attend a Mennonite church in Burnaby, British Columbia. Additional cultural identities. I was raised by a heterosexual couple, both African Americans. My parents had 10 children after their marriage together. I am a 63-year-old divorced, physically healthy, African American permanent resident of Canada. Now I'd like to share how my culture relates to my current FLC stage and expected transitions. Expansion stage. Family with young children, family with adolescents, and launching children and moving on at midlife. Gerson, 1995. I married Dr. Christoph Senger in 1992 and filed for divorce in 2012. I was a single mother with a 3-year-old son when I met Christoph for the first time. He proposed to me in his living room in Germany less than a year later. In January 1993, we gave birth to our first child together. Our second child was born 7 years later in 2000. Gerson would have noted that our family entered the contraction phase when my middle son left to Gardner-Webb University in the United States on a soccer scholarship at age 18. Our oldest son attended Langara College locally. I realized that at this FLC stage of launching children and moving on, I would be a divorcee. It is at this stage that I was meant to reconnect with my partner. My oldest son moved out at age 23, and the middle son moved out shortly after returning from university. The crisis of rebellion during the adolescent stage, according to Erickson 1959-1980 and Montemayor in 1986, is necessary in order for the child to develop a sense of identity and autonomy. For many families, it is the passage from childhood to adulthood. Page 104. Their father was more like a friend than a disciplinarian. He struggled to make and keep friends in high school. I, on the other hand, was a social butterfly. I was a high school cheerleader and later head cheerleader at Winston-Salem State University. I was very close to my children's grandmother in Germany and made yearly trips there to assist with gardening and housekeeping. Sadly, she passed 2 weeks ago. My family in North Carolina look after my mother and stepfather since I migrated to Canada. I speak with my family daily through messaging. The first significant FLC transition, the death of my niece Cynthia and her daughter Yolanda, Gerson 1995. According to Gerson 1995, family crises will arise during times of major life cycle transitions, page 91. My niece and her husband Ronnie were both hearing impaired parents to their daughter Yolanda, a hearing child. My niece awakened in the middle of the night and signed to her husband, "It's cold in the apartment." Ronnie turned the heat to a high temperature to warm up his wife and daughter. He did not pay attention to the box of clothing sitting on the vent. The box ignited and started a fire in the apartment. By the time they awakened, baby Yolanda had taken her last breath. Cynthia was crawling on the floor with Yolanda to get to the front door. Ronnie made it to the door first. When he turned around, he did not see his wife and daughter. Cynthia had turned back to get a blanket to cover Yolanda's head and face when she tripped and fell on the blanket. Yolanda lay on top of her mom, stiff and not breathing. Cynthia had knocked herself out from the fall. The apartment burned down with Cynthia and Yolanda lying in the middle of the floor. They were untouched by the fire. Cause of death was listed as smoke inhalation. Cynthia was the niece I raised, as her mom was on drugs and living on the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina. I grieved the death of my niece for many years. Its impact on my life, its impact on my family and me. The death of Cynthia and Yolanda was the first tragedy in our family. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Fire Department donated sensor fire alarms to every home with a hearing impaired person. The support we received from the community allowed us to embrace the beautiful, kind person Cynthia was. I felt in my heart that God could not have taken Cynthia's daughter without Cynthia. They died together holding each other. I felt a strong sense of guilt and shame because I was at university and unable to help. My sister struggled with the death of her daughter because her daughter wanted to stay overnight with her due to the heating issues in her apartment. My sister felt it would be best if they returned to their apartment. Its impact on my future practice. My experience of loss for someone I loved so dearly was devastating. My sister struggled with shame and blame. She was unable to hold her head up for months. The loss we all felt on this dreadful day and the time we took advantage of in order to heal will help me practice self-care with clients who experience grief and loss. Time can heal all wounds. The second significant FLC transition is the death of my father. Its impact on my family and me. I left Charlotte, North Carolina at the age of 18 for university. I was still angry with my father because of childhood trauma due to all the abuse I witnessed. At age 25, I phoned my father and talked with him about my life. It was at this time that he disclosed he had early onset alcohol-induced dementia in his young 50s. I realized I had lost so much time resenting my father because of the abuse of my mother. I was in university in Wisconsin paying my own tuition and working full time. I was unable to take a flight home to see my father. As my other siblings grew closer to my father, I drifted away. When he died in February, I was unable to attend the funeral due to COVID restrictions. It was then that I realized 63 years had passed and I did not have a close attachment with my father. I spent my entire life punishing a man who did not know how to raise me. He was never taught because he was abused by his father. The impact on my future practice, the realization that I had an unhealthy attachment to my father will help me in my practice with creating genograms to assess behavior patterns in the families I work with early on. The third FLC transition, my marriage to Christoph and the birth of our son. Although this is the first stage identified by Gerson, 1995, page 93, as coupling, we already had a 3-year-old son from my first relationship. Both of our families were pleased with the birth of our second son. Christoph's mom and dad flew to Chicago for 1 month to help with household duties in the USA. A mother must return to work after the child reaches 3 months of age. I was hesitant to place my small baby in infant care. Christoph and I found a private child care home for our baby until he was able to attend daycare. Its impact on my family and me, my marriage to Christoph was blissful early on. He was a very doting and caring father to his sons. He was financially stable and came from a respectable family in southern Bavaria, Germany. Christoph's parents wanted us to relocate to Germany, but this was an unrealistic request. Neither Christoph nor I could find work in Germany. Our sons did not speak the language, and living with his parents was not an option. My family of origin was not in agreement with me living overseas. Our choice to remain in the USA caused conflict in our relationship with Christoph's parents. They had been supplementing our income when he migrated to Canada. They stopped supporting us when they realized we were not moving to Germany. The lack of empathy and support from Christoph's parents was emotionally difficult for us and placed a tremendous strain on our marriage. The impact of my future practice. Conflict in families is inevitable. Chang would note a tip in this case. He would acknowledge how the parents' behavior was hurting Tina and Christoph, and as a result, he would engage in change behavior to specify actions needed to rectify the situation. Shengjani and Schnell note in 2019, page 128, that family problem solving is influenced by the family's beliefs about its abilities and past successes. Many close-knit extended families rely on family support in times of need. The fourth significant FLC transition is divorce from my husband. I divorced my husband in 2012 after almost 20 years of marriage. Its impact on my family and me. Filing for divorce was one of the most difficult decisions I had to make in my lifetime. I stayed in the marriage too long because I didn't want my sons to come from a broken home like I did. In addition, I was worried about emotional trauma for my sons, as our arguing was an insurmountable problem. I had lost my career when we immigrated to Canada. I became an instant housewife. I loved my children, but we needed a 2-parent income in order to run our household. My ex-partner and I are able to tolerate being in the same space for the sake of our sons. Its impact on my future practice. My experience of having gone through a divorce will be helpful when working with families in perpetual crisis contemplating divorce. I will show empathy for couples in mixed marriages with full self-disclosure and transparency about my own failed marriage. My insights reach into mixed marriages that involve national and linguistic differences and family networks that stretch across hemispheres, as well as differences of racial and cultural background. Historic and ongoing marginalization experienced by members of your family. My parents grew up in the Jim Crow South, where they were systematically denied civil rights and educational equality. I can't say that I've been marginalized in Canada, but my oldest son had a daunting experience in 2004 when a police officer stopped him in my car. He was informed that the license plate sticker had expired. My son's girlfriend, who is white, was in the car along with his younger brother. The officer asked the teens to get out of the car. They asked the female if she was in any danger. According to the three teens, my son kept his head down and did not face the officer when she called him stupid. My car was impounded and the youth had to take a bus back to our home. My son shared he was fearful of being arrested, so he would not look at the officer. The female officer felt that this behavior was rude and disrespectful. Privilege. My youngest son was the only one to attend an all-boys private school in Vancouver. He also attended German school since the age of 3 and holds a full German language certificate and passport, which allows him to study in Germany. My sons have the ability to apply for EU passports if they want them. Prior to age 10, for the oldest son, we traveled to Germany, Italy, and Paris every year. My ex-husband never invested in a home. He was very fearful. Social locations. Social locations. Such locations are unique to each individual. Christoph's inability to find employment in the United States caused our family to immigrate to Canada. When we left Toronto for Vancouver in 2004, my eldest son was in grade 10. He was one of 2 minority students. Toronto was a richly diverse city, and Vancouver seemed less so. He retaliated by drinking alcohol and smoking pot. This behavior was not representative of who he was. He was the top 10 provincially, he was in the top 10 provincially for the breaststroke, but was hiding his talent from his peers. The breaststroke is a swim stroke. My family was going through a lot of stress during this time. We had not imagined that we would have to leave Toronto. Health conditions, including mental health conditions of family members. Health conditions: lung cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, alcohol-induced Alzheimer's disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, COPD, astigmatism, drug and alcohol abuse, and tobacco smoking. Okay. Alzheimer's and astigmatism. My immediate family has had long-standing medical problems. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer at 33 years ago and has remained cancer-free after her mastectomy 32 years ago. My youngest sister died 3 years ago after a 3-year battle with ovarian cancer. My oldest sister was diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years ago. She also had a double mastectomy. My mother's sister is in hospice currently for lung cancer. My father's siblings had trouble with alcohol, and my grandfather had a stroke at death. My sons and my medical history are unremarkable for health concerns. My family has endured a lot of trauma and physical abuse, which I relate to their health problems. Generalized anxiety disorder, trauma, and PTSD. Mental health problems in my family went unnoticed. We did not have the financial means to seek proper support. My mom is on medication for generalized anxiety disorder, along with my sister. 2 of my sisters were in the United States Army. Both suffered from PTSD. One was due to a severe military rape and the other was sexual harassment. They receive compensation from the United States military on a monthly basis. I can identify anxiety in the first 2 generations of my genogram, beginning with my mother. There has been trauma due to severe emotional abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. Incest was in my father's family. Relational patterns of interactions that were and or are facilitated by transitions and conditions. I have identified two relational patterns of interaction, the first being trauma and secondly abuse. My family of origin struggled with effective communication. The men in my parental family were raised in a patriarchal household where the grandfather was abusive to his wife, sons, daughters, and granddaughter. Peaceful and collaborative problem solving was not practiced in their home. Family members struggled with emotional regulation and self-awareness. Healthy attachments were unable to be formed. Identified strengths and targets for change. Functional and dysfunctional patterns in a family and what I will share with my sons. Family matters. We grew up in a dysfunctional family with physical, sexual, and emotional violence imposed on us by a parent or grandparent. The love and care given to us by our older siblings fostered resilience in us. We were very close as kids, and we looked out for one another. I have provided emotional support, security, and stability and structure to my sons. They are in touch with their emotions and give support to each other as needed. I encourage them to become a rejecter and do the opposite of the dysfunctional pattern. This worked for my siblings and I, allowing us to become functional parents. Collaboration, peaceful problem solving. In my immediate family of 11 siblings, we would sit and plan how to protect my mother from the physical abuse that awaited her when she entered our home after my father's drinking binges. We would plan and organize sometimes for an hour. 2 of my 3 sons are boxers. They train for months before a fight. They always have a plan to defeat their opponent. My youngest was a rugby player. He always knew where to be in order to tackle another player or to score a try on his own. I will continue to teach my sons to be proactive in life and to always plan their next move strategically. Identify sources of stress and support. A vast amount of stress in my immediate family and my ex-husband's family stemmed from financial worries. My family never had enough money for the amount of needs in the family. We grew up wearing predominantly secondhand clothes and shoes. My ex-husband came from a wealthier family, but he lived like a peasant with myself and our sons. He did not purchase a home or nice furnishings. Instead, he gambled a great deal of our money in the stock market. I did not want to raise our sons to be hyper-focused and worried about money. Instead, I have taught them how to invest their money, and they are financially savvy. Inferences based on analysis of family patterns. Speculation. The therapist would most likely infer that my family has significant trauma and emotional detachment. My uncle did not know the birth dates of his parents, my grandparents. My father's family had difficulty expressing feelings and emotions outside of violence. They abused alcohol to escape pain, poverty, and medical needs. My genogram displays trauma, emotional imbalance, alcohol abuse, and sexual abuse in 3 generations. My family did not know how to seek mental health support, so a lot of their needs went unnoticed. The child could benefit from family systems therapy to include structural family therapy, intergenerational family therapy, and strategic family therapy. The client could also benefit from EMDR for trauma-based work. In conclusion, what I learned that my past gave me the ability to see how my life has transformed. It offered the reassurance and validation I needed in order to know that I became the best mom I could be. I kept putting this assignment off because it was so painful looking back. I was able to interview 4 of my sisters about their life journey to date. I cried 4 different times. It was so profound to hear their stories and their truth as they remembered it. I was able to understand why my father struggled with emotional connection, why my uncle went to prison for 10 years, and why my grandmother abandoned my mother aged 6 years old and her sister aged 3 months. I am just beginning to make sense of the patterns in my life. My sons, the 3 amigos is what I've named them. They are my breath of fresh air, my resilience buffers. They have conquered immigration, learning French, making new friends, finding work, finding partners that love them to build their lives with, education, and financial stability. They are doing well, and I am very proud of them. This assignment has helped me see my family's current life cycle crisis. My generation is the middle generation on the genogram. I noticed that my father's family struggled with attachment caused by emotional and physical abuse. My mother's family had less issues with attachment. They were very connected in their family. Divorce is prevalent in all three generations as well. I am relating this to the separation of families during the slave trade. My mother's family consisted of strong female leaders. My grandmother completed a degree in cosmetology in the 1970s and opened her own beauty salon. How this will influence my future practice. Since part of our coursework has focused on counseling among Indigenous families, I would like to draw a clearer connection between unjust social conditions that the Black individuals suffered in their lives and family dysfunction. I plan to learn how to use narrative therapy and the medicine wheel when working with Indigenous clients. I would like to use structural therapy in order to address cause and effect of behavior. I have a close relationship with my mother's side of the family and am close to my Uncle Sonny on my father's side. I was fearful of connecting with uncles on my father's side of the family due to incest. That concludes my presentation, and my references are here, and I thank you so much for your time.